What's a good word, Josh? Your boy DKB here. So I came across this rumor, and this really changes the way that I view this entire negotiation with Haason Reddick. But let's go ahead and dive into it, and then we'll kind of, go down all the different paths and thought processes here. So Tyrone Johnson, he's an analyst for NBC Sports Philly. He also hosts a radio show, 97.5 The Fanatic, and he's lovably referred to as the voice of Philly. So from everything I've been able to check out, reputable guy, upstanding, in touch with things that are going on with the Eagles. He mentioned that prior to the Jets trading for Haason Reddick, when the Eagles granted Haason Reddick the right to be able to go out there and try to work out a trade, or at least bring the interested parties to the Eagles, and then for things to get finalized, a few teams essentially already had a deal in place with Haason Reddick. Verbal agreement, ideal number within let's say 1 to 3 million or something being off, right? You think about the earlier numbers, Haason Reddick just said he wanted fair market value, so about $25 to $28 million. So let's just say the initial offers were somewhere in that range Haason Reddick was willing to accept. You take a look at a lot of the rumors at that time for teams that would have been interested in his services. And again, these are just rumors, but everybody under the sun, for the most part, the names I've seen consistently out there, though, were the Cardinals, Falcons, Lions, Texans, Colts, Rams. For fun, you can throw out teams like the Cowboys that I saw. I also seen the Bears, who want to try to pair Sweat up with another dominant person. Same thing with the Jaguars out there with what's his name now? Hines. So, all of that aside, this really changes the dynamic of this whole situation and why it makes sense that Haason Reddick has been so steadfast on, one, not showing up to negotiate, which I still think was a fail and is stupid, but two, why he's willing to sacrifice so much money and ultimately, put what we thought was potentially be forced to retire. Now, this puts Joe Douglas in a very interesting bind, because do you end up just kind of crushing Haason Reddick's career because you want to try to avoid looking any worse than what you are for, initiating and involving yourself in a trade that you were doomed to fail from the start, which, by the way, very sly move from Howie, Roseman, and owner Lucy. 100% sabotage, right? This was set up to make Joe Douglas fail from the beginning, from the standpoint if these rumors are true. Now, when you take a look at kind of the timeline of things, right, you have Joe Douglas trading for Haason Reddick, you have the press conference, then you have a couple of the leaks and stuff, Haason Reddick's potential contract range, 25 to 28 million, the fact that he has no plans to show up, then you have Joe Douglas mentioning that there won't be any negotiations until he shows up in the building, then you have a couple of appearances in Jersey that might have, stipulated or assumed that, he might show up to the building and we can try to start making some real headway here. But now things click, right? From the beginning, Haason Reddick, I don't think had a preference for any team, right? But from all he knows dealing with his agent and working through some of these issues with other teams is, I had at least somebody that was willing to give me the contract that I wanted. The Eagles did what was best for them and not for me by accepting the best offer, which it is what it is. He's mentioned himself, he understands the business side. But two, whatever, it should be a win-win, right? Even if it's not the preferred team out of whatever pool I'm comfortable with, me being Haason Reddick, right? Two, whatever team does get me, I'm assuming they understand I'm not playing for what I had, right? And even Tyrone Johnson himself, in a later tweet from August, mentions that nobody had the expectation Haason Reddick was going to play on the current contract he had. I will be getting a new contract with whatever team that I have going on, right? So I do think there's a piece of Joe Douglas playing this wrong. There's also a piece of Haason Reddick just being done with his money. Show up, do a sit-in, keep your money until, at least these game check periods start. And at least that way you're further ahead of the game, right? You still need to show up by the Tuesday after week 10, if I'm remembering that date correctly. But at least at that point, you haven't sacrificed 3, 4, 5 million prior to the season even starting. So I don't know what to do with this, to be honest. I know a lot of the recent rumors I saw speculate that the Jets will have no choice but to trade Haason Reddick at this point, just to get the distraction out of the building, just to try to, I don't know if they can pull off a player for player or try to at least get close to recouping the value that they spent on Haason Reddick. But I don't know. Again, this is another notch against Joe Douglas for him not living up to the expectations we had as a general manager when it comes to some of these player negotiations. It seems like for every hidden gem that he's found, for every I guess that'd be the big thing, right? The 2022 NFL draft, and then some of these like waiver wire UDFA gems. It almost feels like for every one of these guys, it's not two negative moves to send that back, but it almost feels like it, right? You have JFM, you have Quentin Jefferson, you have Bryce Huff. I know there's got to be plenty of other names that I'm thinking of that we missed out on, that have left the team, etc. But that's essentially been the knock on Joe Douglas before, right? Is that players that have left that we felt like should have been retained, could have easily been retained, were valuable additions to the roster, and would continue to either improve or provide that consistent play. We've heard them all come back and say, A, I either never got an offer, or B, the offer that I got was so ludicrous, meaning a low ball, that I wasn't going to entertain it whatsoever. And then we see them go on to get a deal that is still a huge value still for the team that acquires them. So at this point, it's not looking good for Robert Saleh in my eyes. I know it only being week one. And then with Joe Douglas, same thing. I think you can have a strong argument that he's really living off of the 2022 NFL draft. He's living off the fact that Saleh makes any of his defensive acquisitions look like brilliant moves. And then Brad Boyer, of course, making guys, core special team players that are excelling also helps bump that up a bit from the offensive standpoint, which is what everybody cares about. It doesn't look great. So I'm not sure what to do with this, right? Because at this point, you're still looking at Reddick retiring, which I think is probably less and less of a move that happens. And then you're looking at, which is probably true, the latest news that we are going to be forced to have to trade him again. And there are a number of names that are circulating, and I do also find it interesting that some of those same names are the ones that were being circulated in the Eagles news prior to the Jets trading for him, although there are some new ones like the Ravens that I've seen out there, the Chiefs out there. So who knows what happens on that front. But very confusing, very concerning overall. Let me know what you guys think, though, ultimately, though, because I might have to do a video where I actually go through the actual timeline of events here as we've had news roll out, just to kind of fully summarize and cap everything. But does this change anything for you? Is this a move that Joe Douglas couldn't have predicted, or should he still have found a way to work around this? Or do you feel like this takes some of the weight off of Joe Douglas and it's kind of been pulled out of his hands? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.